we have any public participation tonight? Hearing none? Move on. To consider the approval of December 20th, 2018 school committee minutes as written and/or with corrections as recommended by the superintendent of schools. Any motion on this?
I move we accept the minutes of December 20th.
Second on that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? 3-4. Okay, principals report.
I do not have one.
Excuse me?
I do not have one. I do not have one.
You do not have a principal's report tonight, okay. Anyone from the school board have anything? Okay. I have a meeting next week with ABM Mechanical on Wednesday. Originally for the 23rd, we put it back until next week. I think on the 16th, he's going to be here at the school around 9:30 a.m. if there's anything here. So hopefully in the following weeks after that, I'll have something to report on what direction we should probably look at heading. Another question I have is, how is the plowing being done? Is the plowing being handled all right?
Yes,
Sounds
yes.
cool.
I did have to call him one day, but it was because Edmund only had 1 inch, and that was the day we got about 5.
Okay.
He came right down and apologized.
Superintendent's report.
A couple of things this evening. I am going to report on your audit tonight, but before we get to that, I'll just get these other ones out of the way. I had made contact with Professor Biddle at the University of Maine, and she and I have exchanged emails. We had a phone call set up for Monday morning at 10, but she must have got tied up doing something because I did not hear from her. But she and I have indeed made contact, and we will be exploring that and setting a date for her visit in the near future. So between now and then, if any of the board members have some input that you'd like to continue to share with me, please don't hesitate to do so, and I will forward that to Professor Biddle. Immediately, I would entertain some input as to what dates might be most convenient, either for the board or for the school. So if you want to shoot me an email with some suggested dates so I can continue my conversation with her, that'd be great. You can see here on my report for this evening, state and school report cards. I put that on the agenda because in the original plan, the state was going to release report cards on January 7th, and I would have been happy to share that info with the board this evening, but there's been a delay. Essentially, there was what the state is referring to as a soft release over vacation, and I've seen at least a draft of all of the report cards around the district. No real surprises. However, in the memo to superintendents, there were enough questions around the state where the team, Chelsea Fortin and company, decided it might be better served if they delayed the release of that information just to give our friends at the state one more chance to review it for discrepancies. Apparently, principals and superintendents around the state picked up the phone and had some questions. I did not have any questions about Lubec's data, but one of my principals had some questions about data in another town. So we do have one town with a question, but once that is released and available to the public, I will certainly bring that to the board meeting. Just to give you a little foreshadow, kind of whet your appetite a little bit. In the report, there is some new data that hasn't been included in the past, and that would be specifically chronic absenteeism and also per pupil spending as the state calculates it. To go along with your improved growth, your improved rate of growth, which is required, along with your basic how you met the standards or not met the standards in reference to testing. But that additional data on attendance and per pupil costs will also be included in those. I sent the board an email a few days ago indicating that I had received a $3,000 check from the LCOC as a contribution toward Heating fuel costs. I can tell you that my office tracks heating oil expenditures around the district, especially this time of the year. And compared to the previous year, usage here in Lubec is up. We haven't had a really extended cold spell yet so far this winter, knock on wood, but your usage is up. So that's something that we will continue to monitor, but we did receive a $3,000 check from the LCOC. That's much appreciated. And they did state in that memo that they did not feel that repairs to plumbing and heating system, repairs to the plumbing were their responsibility per the terms of the lease. But that's something we can continue to have conversation about. If you would like me to put that on the agenda, to revisit the lease, the terms of the lease, we can do that. It's not on this evening's agenda, but that is something we can add in the future if it pleases the board.
Probably put that on the next meeting's agenda.
Okay, we'll make a note of that. Okay. If there aren't any questions about those other items, I'll move into your audit. Board members get the snazzy blue bound audit here. I did make some copies of the audits. If there's anybody in the audience here who would love to have a copy, I would, please. Thank you. One left. There we are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I will also be referencing a couple of pages specifically, frequently used pages. I'll copy those just for ease of reference. First one I'd like to call your attention to, if we would like to look on page 25, you will find a statement of the general fund and your position at the close of business on June 30th. I'm pleased to say that the news is good. You have this page in front of you. If we look all the way at the bottom, third column under actual, all the way at the bottom, you will see that we do indeed have $375,161 at the close of business on June 30th. So, a couple things that I would also remind us of. If we want to look at page 9, this page includes your liabilities. What I want to call your attention to on this page, accrued contracted salaries. General fund and special revenue, you can see $70,340 under the general fund, $7,051 under special revenue. Add the two together, $77,391. Those are accrued salaries. Those are what we owe our staff for July and August. Employee contracts typically end August 31st, as we know, but the fiscal year ends June 30th, so the accrued salaries account for those 2 months. The other item that I want us to pay particular attention to is found in your current budget, the FY19 budget. Use of balance forward, $125,000 in this year's budget. And the reason I call your attention to that figure is if we do some simple subtraction, 375 minus 125 will take you down to $250,000. We subtract out, for easy math, 80,000 for accrued salaries. When we pull together your budget for the upcoming year, fiscal year 20, or school year 19-20, you'll have around $180,000 potentially that could be used to bring down expenses. That is how much money is generally available. So, in my opinion, this board can direct me to use as much of that as you feel comfortable doing. That amount of money is functioning in your current budget essentially for tax relief. Prior to the final adoption of our current budget back in October. We increased our use of the fund balance to the $125,000 figure. The net result was a savings to the taxpayers of Lubec of some $22,000 that is reflected in your current budget. So that's how that number is used. Just to dig into the weeds a little bit more, without going into nauseating detail, if we look at the expenditures, the middle paragraph on page 25, I want to call your attention to a couple of things. Second line down, special education, all the way to the right. You can see that we pulled through $37,000 in that cost center, which is a healthy amount of money. And the explanation for that, when we look at the expenditures that we closed the year with, there was $26,000 left on the special education tuition line. So what that means is that through secondary tuition, because we obviously educate our elementary students locally, through secondary tuition, either a student left town or their needs changed, and we did not have to expend the full amount. But if you're looking at that $37,261 figure, 26 of it appears as carryover in the tuition line for special education specifically. So I always mention tuition because it's an important number in all of my towns. We obviously tuition our high school students to either WA or Machias, but if there's a change in residency and a child no longer lives in Lubec, then we don't have to pay. And in special education, if a child's needs change, that also can affect how much money we expend. A couple other items in this paragraph under expenditures. If we're looking, the next one that really gets your attention is facilities maintenance, $52,581 pulled through in that area. 18 of which is on your fuel line. So when we budget an amount of money for heating fuel, obviously, we're conservative, and whatever we don't expend, we pull through. You pull through based on our usage. A little over $18,000 in the fuel line. The other major factor in the facilities maintenance line is literally the repair line to the building. We've carried 22 or 23,000 in recent years on the repair line, and we did not have to expend that full amount. Anything we don't expend stays with us. So that those two items account for 36 to 40 of that $52,000 figure. The basic repairs to the facility line and the heating oil line under facilities maintenance. So that's what comprises the vast majority of that $52,581. Continuing along this page, at the end of the day, how much did we pull through that specific fiscal year? If we look at the far right-hand column, where it says excess of revenue and other sources over expenditure, you see a $118,919 line. That's what you pulled through the FY18 budget. So on a $2 million budget, you pulled through $118,000. That's approximately 5%. And because we finished in the black, that effectively grew your carryover from 256, 242 to 375, 161. As I indicated, as we pull together your budget for school year 1920, at this point we have the potential use of, I'd say, $180,000, rough figures. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but I'm arriving at that figure by taking the 375, 161 minus the $125,000 balance forward we've committed to this year, school year 18-19, and I'm holding the accrued salaries that we owe teachers and staff members. So you are in a very strong financial position, I'm happy to say, and you will be in a very good position to at least potentially offer your citizens tax relief based on how much of this balance forward the board directs me to use. So just a little information there. Looking forward to a good budget season.
Extra budget, Tom.
The chair of the
Chair, do you have an extra budget?
for the current year.
The one you just talked about?
Well, that's the audit, Bob. I know you came in late. And I can give you, I actually do have
Yeah,
a
the
copy of
roads
the
are
budget.
fallacious out there. I don't know if that's on TV, I guess, hold on.
That's okay. I do have a copy of the budget, Bob, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah,
Okay. This- I got you, I got you.
all right.
This is the current budget, 18,
Be
19.
careful driving later, too.
I know, it's
terrible
both hands
coming
on the
over
wheel.
Oh, yes, thank you very much.
You're
Sorry to
welcome.
interrupt.
That's okay.
Question?
Question. At the top it says Medicaid and state agency reimbursements, 2000 budgeted, final budget, actual was 0, and it is, considered unfavorable at 2,000.
Yep. And,
Then on contingency, it says 10,000, original budget, final budget 10,000,
uh,
actual 0, but then it's favorable
mhm,
at 10,000.
Right.
How, can you explain to me how, the Medicaid is not favorable
Yep,
on the actual 0, but
Yep.
contingency is favorable on the 0?
certainly. At the top, where Medicaid state agency reimbursements is listed, that's the revenue section. In your budget, we anticipated being able to realize $2,000 in reimbursement for main care reimbursement, and we did not realize any of that.
We did not.
We did not.
Is there a reason for that?
At the moment, the district does not have the ability to bill out for main care.
Because of lack of qualified billing clerk?
Yes. There is no employee in the district who has been trained for that procedure. And I have been asked by other boards to research that, and it is ongoing. But I can tell you that that is why we have not been able to realize that $2,000. We do not have anybody who's been trained in that billing process.
Is there a reason, is there somebody that could be trained?
This is how we've done it in the past. We've contracted the service out. We were notified last year that that service, the person who basically was doing that, was leaving. They left, got a new job, went somewhere else. But the third-party billing agency that we used would no longer be able to provide that service. I've been exploring the possibility of finding somebody else to do that at the request of a couple of the other towns. I've got a couple possibilities. I've spoken to somebody personally who actually works in the business office for another school district elsewhere in the state who does this sort of thing privately on the side for certain school districts. And I've engaged that person in conversation. I've said, what is this going to take? As it was shared with me, and this is a topic of one of my other board meetings coming up this month, it would be streamlined for her to process the reimbursement paperwork if we could code it ourselves. Even that process requires training in applying the right
What was the
code.
billing company that was doing it before?
I believe that was Aroostook Mental Health and Counseling, AMHC.
What were they charging?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were paid through the grant. It was not an expense. So they got a percentage basically of what they recouped for us. And I can't remember the exact amount. So to answer your question, Stephanie, that reads as a negative
I see.
because it's a revenue shortfall. And at the bottom, with the contingency, that reads as a positive because the auditor did not have to expend that. Just to refresh the board's memory, we did indeed vote to activate our contingency because we were over on the legal line, and that is represented on this page by system administration, which shows a $5,533 overage. We did indeed, good practice, activate the contingency to address that. The auditor didn't necessarily have to take it from the contingency line because we finished well in the black at $118,919 to the good. So in essence, what he's saying is that your budget was sufficient, where he did not have to specifically take it from that line. So that's why that $118,919 was added to the $256,242 to give you your present status, $375,161.
And are we earning interest on this? Or is this money being kept? Because I know in the town, they set aside some to CDs and that. They were discussing interest rates and they had a presentation one night.
Yep.
With several banks buying for that. Do we, receive any interest?
I do believe so. I have to check. I'd have to check to make sure, but I do believe so.
Okay. Is that something to be reported to us next time?
Let me make a note. Okay.
Well, that'll be, look that over a bar of coffee.
If there are any other questions about the audit moving forward, you can readdress these at any point in the future, and happy to answer. That's all I have in my report for this evening.
Okay, adjustments to the agenda.
I do not have any.
Old business? And new business. Consider the adoption of policy EBCE, school closings and cancellations. I believe, a copy of that? Basically addresses the closing of schools because of weather and the dismissal of children because of weather, depending on what goes on, what time they're gonna be dismissed and stuff like that. There is an option in here, if approved by the school committee and superintendent, submit a plan to the commissioner that will provide a 1-hour extension to the school day for up to 25 days in a school year. But that is an option that we would have to approve down the road. Correct? Am I correct in?
Correct, that's a separate act.
So,
Yep.
and this is the second reading, so this is for approval, so you want to give that a look over right there. You have a copy of that, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay. So, so we have a motion on that. To consider the adoption of policy EBCE, school closings and cancellation. Someone move that motion?
Can I say something about this? On here, it just says, notice of closing or cancellation shall be given to students and parents by means of media announcement or by other appropriate means. It's not gonna just be by, like, they'll still call us.
School messenger calls out, when you do your yellow sheet or whatever sheet it is with your contact information, that gets put in the school messenger, should come to your cell phone, your home phone.
Okay, and then,
And if you get an email address, it would come to that also.
The other
Okay.
day, did you get a message?
no, they actually called me at work. Because I was at
Okay.
work.
Because it goes out through school messenger over text, and then, you can retrieve the text. And, I mean, we also have other means we can do this on the website. Okay? Not that everyone checks the website, but, and I'm sure, and I did see it on social media too, so. But school messenger is the way to go.
And I'm gonna have Noreen go double check through school messenger again, because you should have received that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a motion on this?
I'll move to accept it.
A second?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor? 3-0. Okay, so. And we have a guest here tonight. Thank you for making the trip. In our lovely weather. Gail Erdine from Maine Department of Education is here to fill us in on Truancy.
And chronic absenteeism,
Right.
whatever it is that.
And the reason we asked you here, because when I attended the meeting down in Augusta there a number of months ago, I happened to be into one of the little side seminars, which had nothing to do with truancy, but it had to do with special education. But this truancy and excessive absenteeism,
Is this a Drummond Woodson?
yes,
Falk
this
that
actually,
one.
it
Okay.
actually took
This is
the
haunting.
stage. It
I
actually,
bet it did. I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking
so-
about.
So we talked more about this than we did about special education, because it affects a lot of children that are on special education programs.
Was this the issue of, if you have kids who are truant and you're working on trying to resolve it and you can't, that their advice was that referral for special education evaluation needs to be made? Is that,
Well,
That's an issue
it
with
touched
them.
upon a lot of, where the kids are on IEPs,
uh,
and some of these children, if they're not in school 4.5 hours a day, okay, consistently and so on like that, they could be considered, you know, truant with excessive absences and so on like that. And a lot of the stuff that, you know, it was supposed to be about special education, but
but it ended up being about truancy.
we talked more about truancy during that little 45-minute sidebar. And anyway,
You know, I looked at Lubec's attendance and truancy data before I came out tonight and saw that at least in our records, you guys don't have any students who are truant and you didn't have any last year either. So I thought, all right, for once I can walk out of my cube and come and talk to people and I'm not really worried about truancy. We can talk about absences.
but
Yeah, okay.
we
So,
were told, you know, in the meeting
Yeah.
that some things have changed because the information is being gathered now,
okay.
okay, is, you know, for whatever reason it's being gathered, they really were kind of in the dark about it.
Okay.
So, and these are the people who kind of write the laws, which was like,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
Just so you know the background, almost 20% of the students here in Lubec are on IEPs. We have 20%, a high number of students that have various medical, psychological, all different reasons to be on the IEP, but it is a large amount of students here.
Stephanie clarifying, is that K-12 you're speaking of?
No, it was pre-K to 8, and there were 16. No? No, it was said at the other meetings. No?
So, I want to be as responsive to the questions and issues that you're dealing with as I possibly can be. If you want or need a general blah, blah, blah about truancy and absenteeism, then we can start there. If you want to start with questions, because you've got
Well,
some specific ones, we can start there too.
I can make some suggestions, try and
Yeah.
frame the conversation. First of all, truancy and chronic absenteeism have two distinct definitions. Truancy is defined specifically in the law, so the fact that we don't have anybody that meets the definition of truant, that's a good thing, don't get me wrong, but I think this board, as well as some members of the community, would have a concern generally, you know, how many kids are here on a daily basis, and they're not gonna make the distinction between truant or what's chronically absent. The other thing I would say is, and then I'll turn it over to you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's a federal driver behind the requirement to submit data as to what is defined as chronically absent.
That's correct, right. So, so there has been a statutory definition of truancy for a very long time. It's a pretty old concept, and it's interpreted differently from state to state and often from community to community. But in general, here in Maine, truancy only refers to kids who are within the compulsory education age, so from their 7th birthday to their 17th birthday. You can't be truant if you're not required to be in school, and you're not required to be in school if you're younger than 7 and you've turned 17. And it only refers to absences that are unexcused. It's meant as basically a tool for holding parents accountable for obeying the compulsory education laws and getting their kids to school or providing some sort of alternate means of education. The Maine statute has required schools to keep records on absences in general for also a very long time, and I don't know how long that time is, but there's never been, up until last year, a requirement for any of that data to come to the state. What has happened is that in the last 10 years or so, when people started really drilling down on what it is that stands in the way of kids making it to school and kids graduating from high school, it became really clear looking at data nationally that when kids have a high number of absences for whatever reason, whether they're excused or not, it has pretty dramatic impacts on their academic achievement, really dramatic impacts on graduation rates, and in fact, pretty serious impacts not just on the kids who are absent themselves, but on the achievement and academic progress of everybody in the school. Because if you think about this, if a lot of kids are absent all the time, teachers are constantly going back and reteaching things that they've taught before to try and keep kids up. And kids who are more advanced get bored, tuned out, you can't make the kind of progress that you'd like to make. So it's a really strong indicator, really kind of easy to collect and strong indicator of how you might expect kids to fare in school. And when the elementary and secondary education law was reauthorized federally, there was a requirement that states start collecting data for accountability purposes on one metric that isn't academic. So attendance, since it was something that everyone had been collecting for a long time, and it is such a strong indicator of how kids are going to do. A lot of states, Maine included, decided to choose chronic absenteeism as the non-academic thing that they would be reporting on to the federal government. So that's where that's coming from. And the other thing about chronic absenteeism is that there is a standardized definition of what it means. It means that a child has been, chronic absenteeism means a kid has been out more than 10% of the total number of school days that they've been enrolled. So pretty easy to wrap your head around. It's easy to calculate, easy to collect, and gives you a lot of information. So that's where it's coming from. And it's been a little bit confusing, I think, across the state because we have been so oriented toward just paying attention to unexcused absences, which is helpful, I think, from the perspective of giving schools a tool to not just to talk with parents about, but also to bring other systems into the picture when kids are struggling with attendance. Our truancy statute gives us tools for instance, making reports to Child Protective Services, and making and connecting with court systems as well. So it has functioned not terribly effectively, but theoretically, as a way of getting other systems involved in working with families who are not sending their kids to school when they should. But for academic purposes and for purposes of like figuring out how to get better results academically, attendance is a much better thing to do.
Well, I just have a quick question, and I hope that this stimulates some questions from my board as well. As superintendent, I have certified data.
You do indeed.
That's one of the things I have to do.
One of your favorite jobs, I bet.
Oh, you have no idea. But specifically, there is the absenteeism report.
Yes.
And you mentioned the definition more than 10%. So when October 15th was a cutoff, approximately 6 weeks of school, you have 5 school days in a week. So if you have 30 days of where a child could potentially be attending school, if they miss more than 3 days of that 30, they meet the definition of being chronically absent. And in case my board is wondering,
At that point.
right, the actual attendance record appears in the data that I certified by name, number of days in the domain, the maximum number of days the child could attend, as well as the number of days a given child has missed. And anybody who missed more than 10% was flagged as chronically absent. It's a little concerning.
It
and
doesn't
what-
show up publicly, by the way.
It does not.
You can see it and we can see it both.
Right, but the reason I raised this issue, 3 days is not a lot of time. I mean, if a child is sick, I'll use my own child as an example. My son was home 4 days sick, and I had to go to the doctor yesterday. That's a legitimate absence, and I'm not gonna send my son to school with him coughing his head off and, spreading germs.
Yeah, I think a couple of things I want to say. First of all, we have gotten into the habit of collecting truancy data, behavior data, and chronic absenteeism data on a quarterly basis, because what we were finding, specifically with truancy and behavior, which is really kind of heavy reporting, there's a lot of narrative stuff that goes along with it, that if schools were leaving it till the end of the year to do all of their reporting, the burden of holding on to all that documentation for that amount of time was pretty awesome, and challenging, and we thought it might work better, if it was possible for people to put their data into our system on a quarterly basis. So that really was meant, honestly, as a way of helping folks keep better track of things and staying on top of issues. Also wanting to make sure that if there was an emerging problem, you as the superintendent were seeing it early on, and administrators were seeing it early on, so if there was a need to intervene, you could do it right away. So there's no intent for anyone to be worrying about like how it looks that the kid's been out for 30 days at the end of the first quarter. The only thing that we use and the only thing that gets reported are end of year results. So what I would say is to try and use those quarterly reports. If you don't have other structures in place to really monitor attendance, to use it as your early warning system. The bed is right there. You can see if you've got kids who look like they're accumulating a lot of absences. And a lot of times there are perfectly good reasons
Right.
for a kid to be absent. What you want to be looking at as a school and as a district is the rate of chronic absenteeism across all of your students.
Question, I have so what do you consider excuse like that? The families that go on vacation Disney World for a week, and are they considered truant if it's only into October and they're gone for 7 days? I mean,
Yeah.
that's considered, what is that considered?
So you guys have a lot of discretion in those particular circumstances. Statute defines, I think, 5 different kinds of absences that are excused. There's illness, family emergency, oh my goodness, education disruption, homelessness or foster care or placement in corrections or hospital facility. What's the 4th one that my brain is not remembering? And the 5th
Funerals?
one, sorry?
Funerals?
Um,
What about another family emergency?
family emergency, which I think I said. And then there's this category of approved absences for personal and educational purposes.
So if a family was already knowing that they were going away, say to Disney World, in mid-October or whatever it is, and then 30 days school starting, they would probably go to the principal and say, we have tickets to, or allow the child to be out of school for 5 days, even though it's not an illness or anything that you've mentioned. If they got it pre-approved by administration, they should be fine and not in the truancy.
If they get it pre-approved, then the absences are considered excused, and then it wouldn't be true. And I think that issue is one that I get calls from schools about more than just about anything. Because my sense, just being honest, is that schools feel pressed to say okay for some things that perhaps they would prefer to not say okay for, and and therefore end up excusing absences that in their educator heart of hearts, they don't really feel are excusable. So, I think it really is on the district and the board to think hard about what kind of guidance you might want to put in place to put some structure around what is excusable, what kind of absences should be approved and what maybe should not, yeah.
I was interested in how other districts, have dealt with the idea of one family is given, excuse to go to Disneyland and the next family isn't.
That's
I
why,
think that pick and
that's
choose
why,
to make a
that's why I
fair
re-
playing
that's why I
ground
really
here.
think that it belongs, I feel like it belongs in an in an absence, attendance policy. Because those sorts of things should be, administered fairly.
Mhm.
And should also be administered, I think, in a way that protects, instructional time as much as possible. I mean, if you have the ability to have requirements for assignments to be submitted, you have a lot of leeway as a local school district in terms of what you can ask for from a family in order to excuse that absence. And if you are feeling like your kids are losing out, and your classrooms are losing out because families are taking vacations and kids don't have a way of getting caught up, and you've got the space to deal with it in your local policies.
And there's a difference between an attendance policy and a truancy policy.
There is a difference between attendance policy and a truancy policy. I'm not sure why that is, because they come from the same chunk of statute, but most districts do have separate attendance policies and separate and truancy policies. The truancy policies, and I'd like to talk about both of those for a second, if I could, and just like stop me at any point, because I know in our statute there is actually a statement that the DOE collects attendance policies, which I don't think has ever happened. So I've done a quick tour through school district websites to see, just to compare what people's attendance policies look like and what their truancy policies look like. What I've seen is that the truancy policies are pretty much cut straight from the Green School Management Model Policy. But the attendance policies are very, very different. The truancy policies pretty much just reiterate what's in statute. And that could be changing, by the way, let everybody know. But one of the things that the truancy statute calls for beyond having a policy is that schools have clear procedures. In addition, these don't have to be board approved, but there should be procedures that are clear to everyone on what who is it that keeps on top of truancy, who is it that invites parents to an intervention meeting, which is the first step in responding to truancy. What does that intervention process look like? All of that stuff is locally decided, and again, for the purpose of having things administered fairly, I think it's a really good idea to really think that through and have a process in place. Everything other than the intervention piece of truancy is really pretty much in the law. You don't have any wiggle room on it, and your policies will probably reflect exactly what's in the statute. Yeah.
And I believe I was reading the truancy policy, one of the options as you go down after intervention and contacts was to it's brought to the school board.
It's not actually an option, it's a requirement.
Mhm.
It's not a may, it's a must. So basically, the way that the truancy statute is structured is that, the school district creates, and outlines an intervention process. And you've got absolute freedom to do that however you want. You can do it, you can intervene until the cows come home. When the school gets to the point of concluding that their interventions are not working, then there are some required steps that the school has to take going forward. And one of the first ones is notifying the board. So the board should be made aware anytime a kid has been truant, the intervention process has done whatever it is that process looks like. It has failed, and the superintendent is planning to move on to the next phase, which involves sending out this certified letter that says a few very specific things, again in law, trying to meet with the family, and then making a referral to law enforcement for civil action. So, again, in looking at your records, I don't see anyone who's showing up truant. It seems like every absence has been excused. So, from the board's perspective, I wouldn't expect to be seeing anything here.
Speaking of excused absence, what's
Yeah.
excused, what's not excused, that's at the discretion of our principal as to what's excused and not excused. So here's a question.
Yeah.
What constitutes a day? To my knowledge, there's not a hard and fast definition laid handy of a day. The one that's always been in place throughout my career, if we're talking about 4 hours, if you do an early release, 11:30, that counts as a day. It matters for attendance purposes, nothing to do with truancy, but it
Right,
matters
right.
for attendance purposes. If a student leaves early for whatever reason, could be anything, is it gonna count as a day or not for attendance purposes? And my principal is gonna be asked literally, and is being asked literally,
Right.
look at your watch, how long have
Yeah,
they
so
been here?
here it goes, and this is actually something that came from the federal guidance on how we're supposed to be reporting chronic absenteeism. The day is whatever you and the state defines as a day. If a child misses more than 50% of the time that she is supposed to be there, her day, not necessarily your day, but her day,
Right.
then she's absent. So if you have a child with a disability who is for some period of time on an abbreviated schedule, and they're only coming in for 3 hours a day, then they aren't absent for our records until they've missed half of that time.
So,
If they're supposed to be there for 3 hours and they're there for an hour and a half, then they're present. And that would go also for like a high school student who only has 2 classes left before they graduate. They're there for 3 hours. That means that they're absent if they're gone for 4 hours.
okay, so on an abbreviated schedule, if there's a child on an abbreviated schedule, it doesn't go by 7 hours of school and they're on an abbreviated schedule for 5, so every day they're missing that
Right,
too.
no.
No, it goes by whatever their
It goes by
IEP.
their schedule, that's
Yep.
exactly right.
Okay, so they would not be considered absent at all if they show up for their 5 hours every day, but they
No.
aren't there for the
No,
full
they're-
day.
They are present.
Yeah,
They're
and,
present all
and
day.
they're not reported, do they have to be reported to the state at all? On the state data that they're talking about? That doesn't go against,
It wouldn't show up, there
No.
wouldn't be anything that would show up on the state data. They would show up in your records and in our records as having been present for the day. I shouldn't speak for you.
The subject will come up again. I've alluded to the state and school report cards, which aren't in front of me. That's somewhat of a disadvantage right now this evening, but I will tell the group, I've mentioned this, that there is a place on the report card where it just says chronic absenteeism. And it's color coded. Red means danger, green means you're in the clear, and it's literally red and green. So this matter is going to come up again, I would suspect, in the not too distant future, once those report cards are released to the public. So theoretically, this would be a question that could come up in any of my schools. If on the report card, the emblem for chronic absenteeism is red, and any of the boards receive a question, you know, what's the definition, then what you're sharing with us is gonna be our answer.
Are you feeling clear, or any other questions about what that's, because you're right. When I only looked at your attendance report, I haven't looked at the soft release of the report card, so I don't know what that looks like. But it looked like last year, based on the NEO report, chronic absenteeism was coming around 15% for the school. Is that where it ended up? Yeah. So that's the red, isn't it?
Yes.
This is. Yeah. And for your information, I mean, it's not a good thing, but it's also not extraordinary. 15% is pretty much the average across the country for chronic absenteeism in schools. And when I looked for how things are looking this year, it actually looks like it's going down a little bit, so that's a good thing.
Is that figure just unexcused absences,
No,
or that's all
chronic
of them?
absenteeism is all absences, right?
So even if a child was having severe medical problems and was gone 2 days a week, or in surgery for 2 weeks, that would
That's
be
gonna show up as an excused absence.
as an excused
Right.
absence, but it'll go against the school?
It will, yes, it will. It's part of, it's a small part, but it is part of the state's accountability system. So no school would end up being identified
Needing
having-
improvement.
Needing improvement, thank you, solely on the basis of chronic absenteeism. It's an initial screen, but unless there were issues with academic performance as well, and growth and proficiency, the school doesn't show up just because of absenteeism. What was I going to say? That's the
And
question
the
I'll
whole
come back
driving
to.
behind this collection of data that's changed is federal.
It is, right.
What are they doing with the information, do you know?
They are giving us money
I was
based
gonna
on,
say,
based on,
are they gonna
based on the
take
fact
money
that we
away or
provide
give us
them
more
with this.
money?
Yeah, so federal funds that we get and get dispersed through the schools, through the school like Title I, which accounts for a significant chunk of change, especially for schools with higher poverty rates, are really dependent on us doing a proficient job of reporting the things that people ask us for. So that's part of what it does. But it also, I mean, just to be honest, gives us a way, and everyone a way of looking at how we're doing relative to other states and other communities across the country. And I don't think that Maine is going to stand out anywhere due to extraordinarily high chronic absenteeism. But I do think that it's a metric that it's good for us to look at and to think about what tools we have in our toolboxes to help reduce the amount of time that kids are out. And not to feel, I mean, honestly, that if a child has a chronic illness, that's not impacting their education. Of course it's impacting their education. And to be thinking about what we can be doing in terms of working with parents and having health resources and health educational resources in the school that at least minimize the impact of these chronic illnesses on kids so mean, one thing that, sort of jumps out when I look at information on school absenteeism is that asthma is probably the health condition leading to the highest number of absences across the country. And that's something that we can impact, right? I mean, we can have asthma plans in place for our kids and can check in to make sure that kids have, those things.
Inhaler.
Thank you, right, and so really keeping on top of things like that, making sure that the nurse is really involved in thinking about how many food attendants in the school can really impact stuff like that. Kids don't have to be out, necessarily as much as maybe they are, when they have those conditions, we can impact that to some extent. Stuff like, I guess a really common one that comes to our nurse consultant is kids being out for lice. Right? No, absolutely no health reason for that to be the case. So I'm learning about what is and is not a necessary absence for kids due to health issues is an important thing to do.
So here's a kind of a confirmation that I have. I'll ask you this question. In years past, when scores have been released, ratings have been given, whatever the format, schools that were done to be in need of improvement had access to money to help them improve. I've heard that's still going to be the case in the future. Is that consistent with what you heard?
So, yeah, I am not part of the school improvement team, but there has been an evaluation of which schools are, term tier 3 schools, that, and if you haven't been contacted to let you know that you're one of them, then you're not. That information has not been released publicly, but I do believe the superintendents have been contacted, which has been flagged. Then those schools do have extra resources. They have a team of coaches and extra funding to get additional professional development and support during things like that. I think it's been a pretty successful program in the past. Yeah. So yes, that's still there.
Gail, are you, leading the presentations that are being done on chronic absenteeism? There's one coming up at the University of Machias, and there were several done this fall. Are you involved in those?
I was not involved in planning those.
There's one coming up.
There is one coming
And
up,
I didn't
right.
know if it was a continuation of the one we
So
sent people to in the fall, or if it's
yeah,
a
I believe that Susan Lieberman from County is doing those. Those were contracted through the school improvement team.
Okay, any other questions at all? Yep.
Well, I guess it was mentioned that, one of the things, and everything you said has been very helpful, but, that there was gonna be help in, helping the school draft an attendance policy. Do you have standardized ones?
So, Maine School Management has a standard attendance policy, that they have also been, busy at work crafting an optional chronic absenteeism policy that they're working on now. And I think that, as I look at this, I'm just being honest, I feel like schools' attendance policies really should reflect the reality of their academic program, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I feel like it's a pretty local and individualized thing that you should be doing, and I'm happy to help craft one that meets your needs, but I just don't think it's really all that amenable to a boilerplate policy. So, for instance, a school that has a very experiential learning program where kids are out doing internships and student-driven projects all the time. Those kids are out of the classroom, could potentially be out of the classroom a lot, and it would be useful, I think, for a school with a program like that to have a way of making sure that they could count those days, those times that kids were out doing the work that they're supposed to be doing for school, that those are counted not as absences at all, but as being present. As long as as long as you figured out sort of what kind of accountability you want to be there. You know, you call the kid absent until they turn the work in. Is there communication online? You know, what is it that it takes for you to be comfortable saying, yes, this kid is supposed to be doing academic work, and I feel confident in saying that that's exactly what was going on. So we're calling this present. You know, making decisions about stuff like when kids are involved in co-curricular activities that really aren't strictly speaking academic, but are being sponsored by the school, and perhaps you have a way for like a kid who's out on a drama trip to make sure that they get caught up on the work that they missed. It would be reasonable to have a discussion. Should those be excused absences, or is the student present, and how do you figure that out? So I think that that's going to look really different for different schools based on the kind of curriculum you have, based on the resources that you have to impose some form of accountability when kids are off doing things and you can't see what they are. So that's kind of where I am. Yeah.
Well, I was sort of wondering, like, a backbone,
Yeah.
something that Ellen brought up about a child that goes away for a week, and this child is excused and this child is not excused. How do we have a backbone so that everybody knows this is an excused thing or this is not? So one person is able to get it, but the other person isn't, and then it'll be an argument that might come to the board.
Yeah.
If we don't have a backbone to say, hey, this is it, all people getting excused on the family vacation, or that is not an excusable thing for anyone.
Right.
How do you, because I don't want it to be, come out to be pick and choose, and then it comes to the board, and it's like, this person got to go to Disneyland last year.
Or
They
you
didn't
could
go.
have a process, right? So a parent is going away for 2 weeks to Disneyland, and wants that absence to be excused, and you're not sure, you could create a simple process where the parent, submits something for review, and asks questions that you think need to be asked. You could also put something in like, and this is how much time they would have to complete work that was missed, or they would take work with them. I mean, I think that you just want to, does that make sense?
That
Yeah.
sounds like a very good policy,
Okay.
to have something in
Yeah.
paper ahead of time saying this child will be out for the full week because of this. Here's, it'll be excused if they do this amount of work, or,
What about the amount of absences that child's already had?
well, that could be, if they deny it, it could say, the reason for denying it.
Yeah. Do you have an attendance team or committee at all to keep track of attendance?
We're all teaching.
You're all teaching all the
And
time, right?
well,
Right.
and double classing.
Right, okay,
and
no, I'm sorry.
a school-wide team
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
of that.
yeah.
Mm.
But some sort of review mechanism, and I think, my sense is that those requests pretty much come clumped at a couple of times during the year. They're not spread out all over the place, like February
Mhm.
and March. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I excuse them all.
I know.
Our kids here
Yeah.
in Lubec to get an opportunity to travel
Mhm.
to someplace like that is an educational experience for them.
And if that's that's the consensus, then there you go, there's your policy, right?
Okay. Very much.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, well, a couple things I hadn't heard. I started my teaching career right in this building in South Street, so I've been at this a while. I didn't hear anything about bullying, which drives some people out of school. I don't know, Mr. Johnson, if you had Leonard Cooper as a teacher.
I did.
Okay, a young woman, 28, told me the other day that she was bullied. She ended up leaving school early because of when Mr. Hooper died, there was no one to care about her. So that was one thing I haven't really heard. I can think of during my career, there was a girl that went to, not Birmingham, but it's where the Space Center is in Alabama. And she was all worried about her work, and I just told her mother, I just said, have her do a report on my presentation on space camp. You know, one of the things that we found out is how they went to the bathroom as an astronaut. You know, she was that kind of space camp during the school year. So that's a good thing, so I didn't care. You know, here, catch up the work. Here, we'll have it for you when you get back. But the other part is, well, let me get some names up in Danforth. I'll make them up. Veronica and Betty. Let's see. They're two young women, reasonably smart, attractive, but they're being pulled in all the wrong directions. I keep hearing about the student assistance team, which I, you know, and these girls weren't showing up. You know, and I said the simple answer was, I just make an announcement saying, well, tell them I'm going to, tell Veronica I'm going to find her after school. I never would. I mean, you know, just. So they would come in and report to Mr. Burden, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm here today. Good, good, we're ready to learn. But I didn't see anything about teacher attendance versus student attendance. And when I went to Danforth, we had a horrible SAT. Before I got there, it was 250 in math. And we said, and we got it up to 410. But the one thing I refused to do was go to workshops during the school year. Absolutely refused. I said, I'll go on Saturday. Any workshop they had. Because you have to set a tone. So I don't know, you have any research on teacher attendance?
For that, I'll tell you, so,
So like a grant, yeah. I mean,
so I actually, last year put together a resource guide on attendance to do more of the kinds of things that you're talking about, which is to figure out why kids are out and to respond to what it is that's causing kids to be absent. You know, if you are looking at your data, is it the case that health issues are what is, you know, primarily driving your chronic absenteeism, or is bullying driving your chronic absenteeism?
or the pull of being an adult when you're 14 or 16.
Yeah, and then being strategic about not just individually, but in terms of the school culture, really trying to respond to the things that are at the heart of those absences. And if you're not keeping track of the absences, you're not going to know who those kids are, and won't know who to be asking about. So
And the other thing is, every day is important. You got to make kids realize when you don't come to class, you're missing something. Not to be mean to them, but you're missing something. And it's toward the end, they haven't made up their work, just give them incomplete. I don't fail anybody, let the school fail, you know, and make them accountable. So I was wondering if there was any research that said if the teacher was gone 20% of the time, how many?
I did try very hard to find that research because
Yeah.
because the kind of framework that we're using to do all of our work includes teacher wellness as one of the sort of main points of intervention for different issues that are happening in school. I could not find anything even close to conclusive.
Sounds like a good grant for me.
That linked teacher absenteeism to student absenteeism.
But I think that would be, there'd be some correlation, I suspect.
Well, I
guy
suspected
like Leonard
too, I
Cooper-
just couldn't find it.
The reason Mr. Hooper, I mean, he was 80 when he died at home, so, you know, he was going to school every day, full time. I see Mr. Johnson smiled, but he was a great teacher. And that was after the 25 years in New Jersey and came back here. So he had over 50 years and.
So I also, Stephanie? Yeah. Okay, am in the process of actually creating some comprehensive guidance to support districts in designing attendance policies that are going to work for them. And I brought the first couple pages of notes that I've put together. And just the way that I'm approaching it is to think about the things that come to me as issues that don't need to get resolved on a case-by-case basis that are amenable to being kind of dealt with from a policy and procedure perspective, exactly the type of things that you're talking about.
And
Yeah.
is it, you're talking about an attendance, council, or, you know, a team, that, is that normal at schools?
So the research on attendance does indicate that one of the most effective things that a school can do to start addressing attendance is to configure a team at the school. And I know that we all have like 40 different teams for 40 different things in all of our schools. So it doesn't mean that there has to be a separate attendance team, but some group of folks with administrative presence, with the nurse's presence, and with any other counseling or support staff presence, and then bringing teachers in as appropriate, to just be in a place where they can review attendance data, which really doesn't take terribly long to look at on a, like every couple of weeks or every month, to see if there are kids who are who are under your radar, you know, quiet kids who you just haven't noticed.
We do
are
that
out.
twice
Yeah.
a month. We do what we call wellness checks, that we meet on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
And it's not just about attendance, it's about notice anybody hungry,
Right.
notice anybody who appears to need clothing, or that type of stuff. We don't have a formal team.
And being in a small town, you have a little closer view of what's going on, because you don't have 1,000 kids here. You know, we're talking, 50, 80,
Yeah.
100 kids.
So I'm just going to tell you, because I'm used to working in really small schools and small communities too. I was sitting in a classroom today that it was clear teachers were feeling really great about it, and because I was fresh eyes in that room, I saw that there were 2 kids there who were totally unengaged. They're just like not engaged at all. It just helps sometimes to not assume that because you're there and see everything all the time that you're seeing it all. I think we all just get so used to what our day looks like all the time that sometimes even if we're small we miss stuff, especially with quiet kids, you know, the kids that just don't rise to our attention because they're not making noise and not creating problems. So having a tool like this group to sit down and look.
Which is your ed tech, your teachers.
Yeah, right.
So it's all different
Right.
Title I staff, special ed
Right.
staff.
Right. Yeah. So looking at stuff like office referrals, I mean, if you have any attendance issues, and doing it regularly with real data rather than your sense of what's going on can be really helpful. Yeah.
So one of the things that you mentioned there was, one of the good people to have on the team would be the nurse. And
Yeah.
we have a 2-year grant for a full-time nurse.
Do you really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I was thinking
That's
that
fantastic.
would be,
Yeah.
would that make a good, natural leader for this team? Because, I mean, we do have that resource. We're very, very lucky
Yeah,
that we
I
have that resource.
I think it's super helpful, and again, you know, I'm in the school that I'm picturing, my head is bigger than yours. But sometimes, because health information is confidential in a way that other kinds of information is not, you know, it's only available on a need-to-know basis. Sometimes teachers actually don't know when kids are dealing with chronic illnesses. And if it's starting to show up as an attendance issue and your nurse is present in that group, then it's perfectly reasonable for the nurse to share information because now a health issue is impacting a student's performance, whereas otherwise that information might not be available.
So that would be
Yeah.
a natural person to be involved in this
I'm
team.
thinking so, since
Yeah.
since unexcused absences just don't seem to be an issue for you guys, that you might want to know the extent to which chronic health issues are impacting attendance.
Any other questions at all? Thank you for
Sure.
making this trip. It was very informative, and look forward to your guidance on
So I'm
how we can
gonna leave,
put
I'm
this,
gonna leave, this is like so partial, but maybe it'll be helpful for you to get started. And as you're trying to draft things and put them together, if there's anything that I can do to help, you will know where to find me, because I'm going to do some card changing. And I know you know where to find me.
You have my email.
okay. Thank you again for making the trip. and
Oh, it's a
coming up
pleasure.
to it, meant a lot to us. And I think we're done